92 Grand Prix wins for Lewis Hamilton barely seems credible, but of course it is, because Michael had 91. So hats off to Lewis for this amazing achievement. I think if you're going to choose a race in which Lewis Hamilton was going to break Michael Schumacher's record of 92 Grand Prix wins, that epic number, you would perhaps choose a race in which it was going to be a little bit drizzly early on, very slippery on cold tyres, hardish tyres, take the lead mid-race and then look after the tyres, difficult situation, cramp in the right calf, and win the Grand Prix. This was classic Lewis Hamilton. This is what we had in Portugal, in Portimao. Lovely circuit, lovely undulations, lots of variables coming in with slight rain at various stages of the race, crosswinds, and not great ambient temperatures, and never a lot of grip from the tyres. But Lewis Hamilton's always had the ability to play these variables incredibly well. And I think one of the reasons for that was summed up by Valtteri Bottas's quizzical comments after the race, when he said, yeah, I was really quick when there was no grip, I passed Lewis, I was starting to pull away, and then I lost all my pace. And it's a question mark why I lost the pace. Well, it's not the first time Valtteri said that or felt that after any given Grand Prix this year, and indeed after qualifying quite often as well. And the answer is, and we saw a graphic today on screen just as the stint on the medium tyre was coming to an end, the wear rate of Lewis's tyres and how he wears the tyres. It's even left to right, almost front to rear as well. Valtteri Bottas, left front 40%, right front 60%. That is the difference. And what does that mean? That means that Lewis Hamilton has this incredible, uncanny, natural, but beautifully nurtured ability to keep the car square, flat, use whatever word you like, but basically to have the G loading evenly spread around the car at any given moment, bearing in mind that G is a variable thing, it's a dynamic thing moving. Lewis has this ability to keep the car evenly sat on the road. Rob Wilson would say flat on the road. Now that applies to braking, it applies to putting on the power, it applies to just change of direction when you're coming from left to right, very quick change of direction, generating a little bit of a flat area where you get the car to sit square before you then put the next input in. That's what Lewis has done from day one. I remember watching him Canadian Grand Prix 2007, his first year at McLaren with Fernando Alonso in the other car. And at turn one, I was watching on the outside of turn two, the hairpin. They go through turn one, which is a medium speed left-hander. Then they have to brake hard for the right-hand hairpin. There's not a lot of room to get the car changing direction and stopping and doing all the things you want. And that's why you see quite a lot of guys locking up there or running wide at the hairpin. And it's an important hairpin because there's a bit of a straightaway afterwards. And Lewis, even in 2007 that is, was coming through the left-hander and then generating a tiny, for a millisecond, a little bit of a flat spot of the car where the car was just dead straight before he started to do what he needed to do for the hairpin. Whereas Fernando was always G here, G there, swinging from one to the right. Beautiful to watch, amazing car control. Valtteri Bottas style, you could say, given the way Valtteri was so quick in Portugal when it came down to pure car control. But Lewis had this thing, and he had that first time I saw him drive, GP2, 06, beginning of the 06 GP2 season at the Valencia test. And into turn one, he was just beautiful with his inputs, incredibly sensitive. So part of this creating a flat car is also to have exactly the right rate of input in everything you're doing with your hands, with your feet, the throttle, with the brakes, with the steering. That would have cramped, excuse the pun, that would have cramped Lewis's style a bit in the closing stages when he did get cramp in the calf of his right foot. But all credit to him that he found a way of doing that. He was backing off a little bit on the straight, but obviously where he needed to have the right throttle response at any given moment, he was still going for it. This is Lewis Hamilton. This is all natural. This is not Rob Wilson. This is not training like a lot of other drivers have done or letting engineers have any input in the way he drives. This is Lewis Hamilton with this uncanny feel for maximizing the tyre on the surface of the road. And in Portugal, you could say after 10, 15 laps, Valtteri seemed to have that Grand Prix won. He'd cleanly passed Lewis in the low grip conditions. He'd started to pull away slightly. But then when the temperature came into the tyres, there was no more real rain. The track wasn't that greasy anymore. And it came just down to maximizing the tyres, getting the most out of the medium compound Pirelli tyre. It was Lewis who prolonged the life of the tyre by prolonging the graining on the tyre because he was not overloading them at any given moment. He was always keeping the car square. This is not something really that you can teach to anybody. It's just a natural ability. It's natural timing. And it's why he's won 92 Grand Prix. He was born with that. And I think the nice thing about Lewis is that regardless of any comments you want to make about him or criticisms you might want to make about his lifestyle, none of which I think are relevant to how we talk about him as a racing driver, I think one of the nicest things about Lewis Hamilton throughout his career so far has been his humility in knowing that he has this talent and being grateful for it and trying to enjoy his life around this natural talent and protecting it as well. So Valtteri, there is your answer. It came down to the way Lewis was, with his inputs, was letting the car sit square and flat on the road, whereas you were loading it one way and then perhaps putting too much brake or load the other way without letting the car progress and settle. That was the difference. So Valtteri finished second, Lewis won his 92nd, and Max Verstappen was third with a tyre strategy that, and I have to be completely open here, I was critical of the Red Bull strategy yesterday. They didn't try to put him on the medium tyre in Q2 and give him a longer stint into the race. And for the evidence of that, I said, look how good he was in FP3 on the medium tyre. 10 really good laps on the medium tyre. Of course, Peter Windsor was completely wrong there because what Red Bull were thinking was, right, yeah, we are really good on the medium tyre, so we will take that tyre into the bulk of the race. That is the tyre we want to be on if we've got any pressure at all from Ferrari, or if we can get near the Mercs for whatever reason, we want to be on the medium tyre. And so they qualified on the soft tyre. It kind of makes sense when you look back at it now. Pirelli did say that the medium hard option was the quickest way to win the race. And I guess that was proved to be correct because that was the option, that was the strategy that Mercedes used. But it didn't actually apply to Red Bull because they weren't very good on the hard and they were really good on the medium. And these are variables, factors that come into play that we can only really talk about after the race. Ferrari, of course, took the Mercedes strategy. They took the gamble to run the medium tyre in Q2 yesterday. They started the race on the medium tyre. It was a really hard, difficult tyre, obviously in the early laps, as we said at the end of the video yesterday. But Charles Leclerc, like Lewis and Valtteri, did a very good job of keeping the car on the island, and he was relatively aggressive. He didn't lose a lot of positions. He lost a couple, but he was there and ready to go when the track picked up a bit of grip and when the tyres found some temperature. The problem for Charles Leclerc and Ferrari is that when they got onto the hard tyre, and I guess this is something that Red Bull had already sussed out, when they got onto the hard tyre, their relative performance went away and there was nothing he could do about Max Verstappen thereafter. It was a difficult day, I would say, on the hard tyre for Charles Leclerc, although like Max, I think he could get out of the car and say, we maximised the performance today. What they didn't do was just go for the same strategy as Red Bull because they were never going to beat Red Bull on the same strategy. So give Ferrari credit, at least they ran that alternative strategy. It didn't pay off, but nonetheless, they were a very, very good fourth, which is a lot better than they've been in the last few months. So in this little world of Portimao and Portugal and this circuit where not many drivers had raced before or even knew the track, Charles Leclerc's talent allowed him to get a really good grid position and he maximised that by finishing P4. Whether that will now continue into other circuits or other races, I doubt, but there's no doubt Ferrari made the most of what they had in their hands in Portugal, and Sebastian Vettel backed it up by finishing, well, 10th. I mean, it wasn't great. He had a long battle with George Russell for most of the race. He couldn't get past George for many laps. They're both on the same tyre at the start, the medium tyre. And George was just brilliant as ever, and Sebastian was lackluster as ever, but he did finish 10th, so Ferrari could say, we got both cars into the points.